Well. Who really thought that President Cyril Ramaphosa could become the ultimate suicide bomber? Well, yesterday he strapped on that vest, walked into Parliament and pressed the button. And in one foul swoop, he basically put the Government of National Unity on notice that it is ending. He exploded that thing. And I don't see how the Government of National Unity comes back from the firing of Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Andrew Whitfield, from the Democratic Alliance. The story needs just a bit of background. By now, everybody has heard what happened. Without giving any reasons, the President has fired Andrew Whitfield, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. And there's basically three possible reasons for this firing. For starters, there was this issue of Andrew Whitfield travelling overseas. Any minister or deputy minister in our bloated cabinet that wants to travel has to get permission from the president. Well, earlier this year, Andrew Whitfield requested permission to go to the US with the DA delegation. After 10 days, still no reply from the presidency, even though they acknowledged receipt of that request. He went on this trip without receiving that permission, even though he had asked for it 10 days earlier. This is something that's usually given within 24 hours. He went on the trip. So there's a chance that that is the reason. But one would imagine if that is the reason, then announce it. Why not give it? The second reason is a very interesting one, and that is that as Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, he's been privy to some goings on within the Ministry of Trade and Industry. As the name would suggest, Trade and Industry handles a lot of things that have got tenders that run into very tidy sums. And the very, very, very questionable tender that has come up recently has been the management of the lottery. Now, the management of the lottery is a license to steal money. You're getting money for nothing anyway. And it's been in every single time the lottery license has been handed out to a different company. That's a South African thing. We keep on changing the company that runs the lottery. It's been a great place for a connected comrade to go and get involved. Surprise, surprise, the Ministry of Trade and Industry has to appoint that operator of the lottery. Who did they appoint? A company called Sizakawe. Formed 6 days, I'm not making this up, before the tender is awarded. The company didn't exist 1 week before the tender was awarded. But what was most staggering was who was involved. One was a chap by the name of Oscar Tembe, who is a very good friend of Paul Mashatile. All over his social media channels, they're forever together. But the other shareholder, I think you should be a little bit more judicious than this, happened to be the twin sister of the Deputy President's wife. And there's some question mark that Whitfield may have been too robust in raising the issue of how this license got appointed, when it says specifically that it shouldn't be appointed to politically connected people. Well, if that is the case, I think it's a part of a bigger problem here. The bigger problem is that the ANC didn't really want to go into this Government of National Unity. We know that. They wanted a majority, but they didn't get it. Much like a child that wants something, but they just can't get it. And they had a couple of options. What were they? They could go back to their old comrades, the guys that used to be part of their party that left them. Konto Wesizwe, EFF. But in both cases, they had crazy demands that the ANC couldn't meet. MK said they would only be part of a coalition with the ANC if the ANC got rid of Cyril Ramaphosa. So now you're telling the guy who's going to negotiate, and the guy who's just been elected as the party's president, that, sorry, pal, you have to go because this small bunch insists that you leave. That was never going to happen. The EFF insisted, if you recall, that they have the Minister of Finance, and they were quite prescriptive on what they had to do. The DA in what could only be described as a moment of absolute, I still don't understand this. I don't think you're going to find this in any negotiations training. Proudly announced and continued to announce what their tactic was, and that was to keep MK and EFF away from government. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you tell people what you don't want, they immediately know how far they can push you. And boy, the ANC knew from the get-go that the DA were going to sit through this coalition regardless of what the ANC did. And boy, did they go for their badge. They passed the Bella Act, even though they knew that the DA had a problem with the Bella Act. They passed the Expropriation Act, even though they knew the DA had a problem with that. They continued to push and push and push, and we had strongly worded letters being written by the DA leadership, as they do. You know, real Karen stuff. They asked to see the manager. They did everything that the DA does, but still they stayed. They never really fought back. Then, in a moment of madness, the Minister of Finance handed the DA a present. The Christmas came early, without consulting anybody on the other parties or the finance committees. When he was due to do his budget speech, what was included in there was a 2 percentage point increase in VAT. It was unacceptable to everybody, except to the minister. For once, the DA could actually stand up to the ANC. And it seemed to shock the living daylights out of the ANC. But it worked, because the Minister of Finance actually had to do his job. He had to go get some consensus with his partners and also find better ways to deal with the money, which are obvious. Stop stealing the money. Stop spending on stuff we don't need. And those changes were made, but politically it was a loss for the ANC and a win for the DA. Well, the ANC doesn't deal with losing very, very well. So what did they do? They kept on, and as this next administration, the 7th administration, has gone on, more and more cases of ANC behaving the way that the ANC does has started to emerge. We found out that our then Minister of Justice, Thembi Simelane, had taken some loans from VBS agents. You know, those kind of loans we all want, those loans where you never have to pay back the money or there's no paperwork for them. The president was surely going to act. And boy, he acted. He promoted her. That's what Ramaphosa does. Instead of being Minister of Justice, she became Minister of Human Settlements. That's got a far larger budget and far more tenders. But I think what started to happen was that these committee members, these committee meetings where certain ministers are held to account, started to become truly embarrassing. And we highlighted it here on the weekly update. The performance of our Minister of Higher Education, Minister Nkabani, where she wouldn't disclose, she lied to Parliament about who was on the panel of people that were appointing the boards of, you know, that famous trough called the Seaters, included Gwedi Mantashe's son, failed politicians from KZN that needed a payday. It was crazy. But now it started to look like the enemy was within. And that enemy was wearing a blue t-shirt. Something has to be done. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa has taken this action, which is quite an interesting line, because remember one thing, and that is that the ANC doesn't want to flat out go and fire or kick out the DA from the coalition, because they then look like people that are trying to hide something. They are desperate for the DA to resign. So what they're going to do is what we would call in normal state of affairs constructive dismissal. You know, that's when you make somebody's job absolutely hell so that they would resign. And that's what they're trying to do to the DA. constructive dismiss them. Make it so that their position within the government of national unity is so bad that they have to leave. And they're going to push it and push it and push it. So they've started it with the deputy minister. The next step is going to be a minister, because I don't think the DA is going to fall for this. I don't think the DA is actually going to go. Right? But the process has started. And I'd like to put something else on the table here. I think that the ANC have already shown their hand, that they're already in discussion, certainly with the EFF, definitely the PA, and a few of those other smaller parties, probably the IFP. And how they're doing it? They're showing their hand in some of these metros here in Gauteng, because they did it this past week in the city of Johannesburg, where they were rescued. The ANC mayor was rescued by a coalition with the ANC, EFF, Patriotic Alliance, and a few others. That absolutely saved Mayor Dada Marrero, who is absolutely diabolical in what he does. So I think that the ANC have got their next coalition lined up. And this was just the first shot in getting rid of the DA. And getting them out of there, because the problem is that the longer this government of national unity goes on, the better it looks for the DA and the worse it looks for the ANC. So what's going to happen next? Well, John Steenhuisen has given an ultimatum to the president to say, you've got until Saturday to dismiss the ANC ministers and deputy ministers who appear in the Zondo Commission, the ones that I've mentioned already, to act against those ministers. He's never going to do it. That deadline will come and go with no action. I mean, we all know that. What does the DA and John Steenhuisen do from there? Well, they say, we're very angry. We're going to write a letter to the editor. But they'll stay. They will stay. But this fight is now at a very advanced stage. This is like a marriage that has gone sour. But I think that in the short term, the DA is going to stay. But President Ramaphosa is going to ramp up the pressure until the DA leaves. But you know what could be quite fascinating is who would be the big winner out of all of this? Oddly enough, the big winner would be the person that the president's trying to protect the most, and that's Paul Mashatile. Because imagine this. Imagine if the DA does walk out of this government of national unity. Unless the Mkhonto weSizwe party comes in to give the ANC and MK 55% of the vote. Right? The president himself is very vulnerable to a motion of no confidence. Because imagine if the DA goes, MK, EFF, all of these people that are not big fans of President Ramaphosa are sitting on the outside, and a motion of no confidence gets put forward against the president. There's a very, very good chance it would pass. The problem then becomes who gets nominated in his place. And the way it works is that any party can nominate a president and whittle it down, and eventually you'll vote. And it will be, probably the ANC's candidate. And who would that candidate be? It would be Paul Mashatile. And the comrades would probably vote for him because Paul Mashatile has already announced that he would happily have a coalition, what the so-called doomsday coalition, as Helen Zille likes to call it. So South African politics are going to have a winter of discontent. Hold on to your hats. This one is impossible to call. I think in the short term, the DA will not get what they want, but they won't leave the coalition. But it's just a matter of when. And that's coming soon. And just keep watching, because, boy, this thing is going to get absolutely furious. So, if you've enjoyed this, hire a car from Pace Car Rental. They'll give you a nice discount. and subscribe to the State of the Nation. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much for joining me.